If you ever find yourself in a situation in Baldur's Gate where you're slightly too heavy, you most likely send it back to camp or transfer it to another party member. I'm sure a lot of you don't even know about the incredibly debilitating heavy encumbered status, giving disadvantage on everything, no jumping, no climbing, no picking up any new items, but worst of all, walk speed like a snail. Obviously no one at Larian expected anyone to go through the pain of completing their entire game in this state, so that is exactly what we're going to do today. Can you beat Baldur's Gate 3 while over encumbered? I started by picking Halfling as my race. All Halflings get a really nifty little ability called Lucky. It automatically rerolls any one that we get for any attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. And since we will have disadvantage on all of these constantly, it will really help out in the long run. As for my class of choice, I stuck with Barbarian, which in hindsight is very dumb, and I would quickly come to understand why there is only one real option for this run. Waking up in the pod, I obviously did not have enough stuff to actually be overweight yet, so I just spawned in a bunch of heavy chests. I will not be touching these at all, they are just there to make me overweight. With my newfound girth, I immediately noticed just how much of a chore this run was actually going to be. The pace my heavy man had was, well, let's just say, not the greatest. After making the long, treacherous journey over to this table in the other room, I noticed the other fun thing about being over encumbered. You can't pick up anything. No items, no armor, nothing. Until I could find a way around this, I would just have to make do with what started in my inventory. I greeted Lae'zel right down the hole she belongs, and used my 2 throwing axes to finish the first imp fight. And now I can't pick them up again. Great play by me. Not being able to pick up any items, I kept moving and already encountered this run's first major roadblock. It turns out that being heavily encumbered not only gives you disadvantage on everything, not only makes you move like a snail, but even prevents you from jumping or climbing at all. So was this it? Was I already stuck? Surely not. There had to be some way to get up this ledge. And after scouring over all the classes, I realized that the answer was obvious. Sorcerer, with its storm sorcery. Its only feature, tempestuous magic, lets us use a 9-meter fly as a bonus action after casting any level 1 or higher spell. And thanks to an interaction with ritual spells, we can now spam it any amount of times without expending any resources. Not only letting me clear the impossible ledge, but also letting me move around at a pace that was, mind you, still slow, but at least bearable. Sorcerers also get magic missiles, which, since they cannot miss, completely bypasses the permanent disadvantage that we have. Masochistic as this run is, I thought that going with Dark Urge would only be fitting, failing to help Shadowheart, since I couldn't even pick up the Eldritch rune needed to open the pod. I made my way to the helm. Here comes the first encounter that in a normal run would be no problem, but with this run, oh boy, even an encounter such as this one that is still meant to be the tutorial proved to be a massive struggle. The main problem was that I only got halfway across the room before either the Mind Flayer died or I simply got arrowed down by the imps. So to have any chance at all, I had to optimize. Before entering, I made sure to precast Featherfall, since the flight would last 1 turn. And so, by dashing, I could traverse a fair distance right off the bat. Tanking some pretty negligible damage, I took out the first Hellbore with a magic missile, and made sure to stop right in front of the event trigger. The final imp brought me down to 1 health, and so I was forced to use one of the 2 precious healing potions I had available to me. 2 turns of dashing and another missile later, I was able to successfully make it to the transponder. Something that would normally take like a minute or 2 had taken me 5 tries and a great deal of planning. That's not the confidence boost I needed for what is to come. But you could always give me some by hitting the subscribe button if you're enjoying the video. It will help me out, and you can always unsubscribe later. On the beach, I noticed that not being able to pick up items would be even worse than I expected. You see, not only could I not pick anything up, but I couldn't even equip it. So for now, my only choice was sending it all to camp. I snuck past the Intellect Devourers, chatted to Asterion, and ended a Mind Flayer for level 2. Most people would probably pick Shield here, the most normal and probably best option, but I instead opted for Disguise Self. It's a very underutilized spell, since you just get it for free on a helmet in the starting chest. But remember, I can't pick up the helmet, and therefore I cannot use it. Being the Heavy Urge, I get the option to remove Gale's hand from his body. Here I would notice something that would change this run. The fact that Gale's hand had entered my inventory even though I was already overweight. With this new information in the back of my mind, I killed a few raiders with a giant foundation block, and helped. No, I was definitely there during the first goblin attack on the grove.
Inside! All of you! More may follow!
Who is he talking to? Everyone is dead. Sevlor seemed happy about it regardless, and decided to humiliate me by walking away faster than I could even fly. To test the Gale hand theory, I decided to spare the child, and upon collecting the rewards, noticed that, yep, I was able to equip the amulet. My mind immediately went to Mole and the Ring of Protection, but upon walking over to the idol she wanted, I realized that, right, I couldn't give it to her because I couldn't pick it up. With that failure out of the way, I continued to a nearby cave, where I sneakily blew up a few goblins. After which I collected the parasite from these people, almost failed to get Scratch to go to my camp, and reached level 3 for Cloud of Daggers and Quicken Spell. Because I had taken Disguise Self a level earlier, I could walk past all the goblins and into the goblin camp, where I made sure to get branded by Gut. I also snatched the Crusher's Ring off the foot of this goblin here. It's not the most important item, since we mostly can only move using fly anyways, but at least it is an item. Since we can only use quest items for now, I went over and saved Floric, who rewarded us with the Spell Sparkler. This will proc on every single missile we have, since they are all counted as separate sources of damage. I blew up a few Tomb Raiders and unsuccessfully tried lockpicking a door. Why did I think throwing it at the door was going to work? Sometimes I even surprise myself. This was the first time I realized that food would also be a problem. Most of the places with a lot of food in this game has it just laying on the floor as items. And while we can send back anything to camp that is already in a box, anything that is just out in the open is completely inaccessible. There is still one option to constantly let us spam our spells though: partial resting. It may only bring us back to half health and only restores half of our spell slots, but it's better than nothing. In the room over from the bandits was a door requiring a key to open. This key weighed a massive 0.01 kilograms, way too heavy for us. But apparently, it's almost like the devs thought about the possibility of someone accidentally sending keys back to camp, as after doing so and interacting with the door, I got the same message as you normally get just taking it from someone else. Although now it just said another party member. I stole the weapons from the skeletons and barricaded the door with a few items. This clearly did not work, but the skeletons seemed to think it did, so good enough. Withers now appeared in my camp, and we were going to use them for a very specific purpose. Here I noticed that the chests I had spawned in apparently spawned with their loot tables intact. So to not accidentally use any of it, I replaced them all with 99 breastplates. Anyways, we needed Withers in our camp for a very important reason. Along the journey, I had so far managed to collect 411 raw gold that I had sent back to camp. But right now, we couldn't use any of it, since it was all in my camp chest and I had no way to retrieve it. Here's where my idea with Withers came in. As you may or may not know, if you ask Withers to respec you, he will in fact use gold from anywhere, including your own camp chest. Now the obvious thing to do might be to just spam respec and then pickpocket the gold from Withers, but no. Since we have permanent disadvantage on everything, we would need to roll a 20 with disadvantage, a 1 in 400. But there was another option. By clicking the respec button and then just cancelling it, it would take some of the gold from my chest and then just put it into my inventory. The amount it gave varied for some reason. Sometimes it took 10 gold, sometimes 50. Why? I have no idea, but at least it was working. But wouldn't gold be useless anyway, since we were overweight? No. As it turns out, you can just buy things from merchants, despite the scary red heavily encumbered symbol being there. This meant that I had now at least unlocked a limited access to buying items from merchants. And there was one merchant in particular I really wanted an item from. So it was time to make our way over to the Underdark. But before that, Alfira showed up in camp and decided to kindly donate the Deathstalker's mantle to us. A really useful mantle that will grant us invisibility for 2 turns after killing any enemy. The fastest way into the Underdark would be to just go through the goblin camp. So I went back and purposely got myself drugged to sleep by Gut, just to get rescued by a mysterious woman working for someone we had yet to meet. With Gut dead, I was going to collect her parasite, but noticed that there was no way for me to move it from her inventory to mine. For now, that means no more illithid powers until I could figure out a way around this. With Gut and her bodyguard gone, we had cleared the path to the Underdark. First stop, Falar Aluv. Here came one of the most important checks of this entire run. I made sure to chug the 1 Hill Giant strength potion that we had in our starting bag and managed to succeed the strength check. I couldn't use it yet, but soon enough its shriek would add a substantial amount of damage to us. I encountered the bullet and just barely, thanks to a quickly cast Featherfall, had enough movement to escape with my life intact, and had now officially made it to the mushroom colony. Speaking to Blurg, I could now spend my hard-earned money on the Psychic Spark, which by itself basically just upcasts every magic missile we cast by 1 level. I also picked up the Lightbringer here. It's not too great, but it's better than nothing. Making my way into the Centurion hideout, I reached level 4 and could now pick up Shield and the Trade Dual Wielder, letting me use Falar Aluv in my offhand. Since I couldn't really move around much on my own, I figured that grabbing Shovel would be useful. But upon arriving, I learned that whilst Warlocks, Sorcerers, and Wizards normally can get him without any problem, for some reason, if you are a Storm Sorcerer, he will just say that you smell funny and then refuse to follow you. So I finally had to risk some of my money and temporarily respec. It wasn't all bad though, as I learned here that I could in fact steal the money back from Withers with no problem. The game will just add the pickpocketed items to your inventory regardless of your weight. Very good to know. I collected Shovel and went back over to the Sorcerer immediately, since just walking there had taken several minutes. Thanks to friends, I was able to collect the horn from Lump, and noticed that apparently using lockpicks from inside your camp chest works fine, even though the graphic is slightly bugged. Anyways, it was time to deal with the Goblin camp. Starting off, I needed some poison, and Dareth in the Underdark was nice enough to give me some free of charge. Using it to poison the booze outside, I was able to take out a fair few. After rescuing Volo, Minthara plummeted down a hole, but her liar really did not seem to want to join her. I went over to help out Halsin, and with our 3 items, we could now dish out some serious damage. Somehow, the spiders had gone out all by themselves, the perfect opportunity for me to join in. But the fight did not last long, as I almost got one-shot by the Warlock, and only got away thanks to my cloak. Asking Halsin for help, things turned out quite differently, and I turned my attention over to Ragslin and the only real challenging fight in the Goblin camp. As of patch 6, he now has a legendary action. It makes it so that if we target any of our allies with anything, it would let him action surge himself and everyone around him. Good thing I was not planning on doing that anyways. By abusing the fact that I can get temporary invisibility from my cloak every turn, I got Halsin to tank all of Ragslin's attacks, and after making Halsin use a Call Lightning, shredded through Ragslin's HP on the following turn. Already 50 unmissable damage with a single level 2 spell slot. Not bad at all. After collecting the 500 raw gold in Ragslin's vault, I ran into a few nice paladins and helped them take out an evil devil. I returned to the grove for my reward, and on my way to accessing it, discovered that apparently if you just click on parasite specimens, you will automatically consume them without the need to actually use them. Guess the illithid power problem is solved. Time to exterminate some gnolls. By starting combat close to Flint, I managed to easily persuade her into turning on her own kind, completely trivializing this encounter. Behind her is a shipment container, and after embarrassingly failing to open it, I decided that it would just be easier to blow the Centurions up instead. I failed to kill Kaga, and instead went over to take out the hook horrors one by one. Using Glut to resurrect one of them, I easily got rid of the rest. And with the horror, I climbed the food chain, from horror to Minotaur, and from Minotaur to Bullet. Coincidentally, I also leveled up to level 5, which gave me level 3 spell slots, and with them, Haste and Counterspell. With a hasted Bullet, the rest of the Underdark became extremely free. At least I got to see Shovel speak to some fish people, so that's always something. The Dwergar near the lake did not fare any better, but before finishing the encounter, I made sure to have the Bullet take a bath in the lake. Because if I didn't, Glut would run up to me and I'd be forced to fight them both. And whilst a lot of people told me that this does not happen to them, it always happens to me for some reason, so into the lake it is. Without Bullet, Glut went down without much trouble. I took the boat over to the Grimforge and convinced some Dwergar to fight near with me, whenever I felt ready for that is. I really wanted the big chunk of XP that Grim granted, but the problem was that in order to trigger the boss fight, I would need to not only insert Mithril ore, but also a very heavy mold. At first, this seemed impossible. I couldn't even pick up the ore, or the mold for that matter, yet alone get it all the way over to the forge. But then I remembered something that had happened when I tried entering the Arcane Tower. First of all, the way there was very treacherous. Since I barely had any movement, I had to carefully choose where I went to not get gunned down by the turrets. Using haste and double dashing, I was able to get a whole 20-meter movement, but to actually reach the top of the tower, activating the elevator would be necessary, and it required a saucer flower in order to operate. Of course, I couldn't pick up the saucer flower, but I was not ready to give up yet. So I moved it all the way over to the elevator and noticed that you could in fact insert items straight from the ground into things. With this knowledge, I figured that maybe the forge would work the same, and so I transported ore and the closest mold I could find all the way down the forge. I thought that this was going to be very annoying, but considering that I had gotten used to moving around like this, it was not too bad. I activated the forge and shot the valve from up on top of the cliff. Using shovel, I was able to lure Grim over to the center and hit him with the forge. Then I just had to hide and wait for Grim to kill all the methods. While hiding, Grim cannot see me up here, so I could lure him over to the center using minor illusion over and over. Here I got to learn that the adamantine armor and weapons auto-equip whenever you interact with them. So if I wanted it, I could get the armor here. It would just require another 10 minutes of transporting items. Now to use it, I needed another level, so I went over and saved an old woman and almost died to a few redcaps. Following Ethel down into her basement, I got level 6, and with it, availability to spec into Cleric for heavy armor proficiency, boosting my AC all the way up to 19. I began my journey to the mountain pass, and ran into the Gift Patrol on the way. Apparently the game deemed me too weak, as even my character told me it would be suicide. I am not one to back down from a challenge though, and as the game had prompted me to leave, I made sure to stay. Using shovel, I surprised them all, and with the one free turn I got, made sure to call upon Lump and his gang. One of the Gith ignored the ogres completely and decided to use Hold Person on me. Thankfully, the ogres tanked everything during the 2 turns I was stunned, and I broke free just in time to finish off the remaining Gith. With that, we were off to the mountain pass. I cleared out the outside of the creche and entered, immediately heading over to the Inquisitor's chambers. Here, I could find my best in slot gloves, but this time I was not lucky enough to have it be in a shop or from a quest. It was an item that just laid there, within reach in a chest, but I had no way of getting it. I could just have moved on, but I felt like it would be more fun if I could find a stupid way of getting it. And after testing a bunch of things, I realized that it was simple really. Remember how I was able to pickpocket back my money from Withers? This was exactly what was going to let me get the gloves. What if I pickpocketed an NPC, but instead of taking any items, I would put the item I wanted in first? I moved the chest up close to this gift lady, and after a close call, managed to give her the gloves. And so, after successfully rolling higher than 13, I had done it. The gloves were in my inventory, and I just needed to pretend like nothing had happened as I scurried away. With the gloves acquired, I decided to try and go after the best in slot boots for a magic missile build. These were available only from Umelum after giving him some mushrooms, so back to the arcane tower I went. He needed a Timask spore and a tongue of madness. My weight would cause an issue as I couldn't pick them up, but yet again, somehow there was a solution for this. Finding one in the basement, I noticed that for some reason you can still extract things that are not even in your inventory. So all I needed to do was gather 3 in one location. The game seemed to want me to succeed, as I found 3 tongues of madness on the table in the basement, and 2 stories up, 3 Timask spores on a shelf. With the ingredients in hand, I returned to Umelum, who whipped up the potion, and after drinking it, now sold me the boots of Stormy Clamor. I still don't understand how all of this was working out so perfectly, but I had now gotten both of the reverberation inflicting items. Now came the time to deal with Nier. To open the way, I needed some sort of explosion, so I went over to Philomene and borrowed both her small and big explosives. The Dwergar I had asked for help came to my rescue, and after dealing with the smaller enemies, they were able to take care of Nier all by themselves. The reason I wanted Nier dead was not for anything he had on him. Instead, I wanted an item from Sergeant Thrin, the Ring of Absolute Force. It will increase any thunder damage we deal by a flat 1, which should trigger on all Falar Alluve and reverberation damage. This only works if we are branded, which is why I also made sure to brand myself prior. Since there were a few Dwergar left that had helped me take out Nier, I could collect the ring using the same pickpocket trick that I had used in the creche. Feeling like I wanted level 7 before challenging defeating Ethel, it was time to enter Act 2. I met up with the orcs, waiting for Karnas, and somehow pulled out a lyre that I didn't even have. At the ambush spot, I, as per usual, turned on Karnas, and the first attempt did not quite go to plan, as I accidentally killed someone standing in Karnas' radius, letting him retaliate with a devastating attack that one-shot me. Second attempt started off better, as Karnas targeted the Harpers and got stuck on the floor below me, letting me take out everyone else. I thought that this would be the end of it, but eventually he realized that he had legs and jumped up to face me. At this point I had 0 spell slots left and only managed to win due to the fact that he positioned himself next to a cliff. To proceed into the darker parts of Act 2, I needed protection from the curse, which the lantern would give me, but here was the problem. I could not pick up the lantern, and this time there was no one around that I could pickpocket. So with no other options, I sent it back to camp. Here I tried a bunch of things. I first tried pickpocketing Shovel, that did not work. I tried breaking the lamp, and that did not work either. And so, in a fit of frustration, I decided to just throw it. And guess who just picked it up and then walked it over to me? The most groundbreaking discovery was so obvious. How had I not thought of this prior to this moment? Any item I threw while Scratch was around, he would simply pick up and just bring over to me. Not only giving me the lantern, but now also giving me accessibility to almost any item in my camp chest. With this incredible revelation, I went over and decided to purchase the Darkfighter shortbow, and it costs a nice 3,700 gold. I did have more than 2,000 gold in my stash, and so decided to have Scratch fetch it for me. And here notice that, yeah, don't try to make him fetch stacks of more than one item. He will be stuck just picking them up one by one for a very long time. So I guess I still need to use the respec strat to get the gold. I got level 7 from some tree along the way, 4 level 4 spell slots, and the knock spell, and decided to go back and tackle the final encounter in Act 1. By going Invis, I could release Myrina before the fight even begun, and haste myself without getting surprised. Ethel splits once per turn whenever I cast a spell, but because I had magic missiles, clearing out all the copies was easy. She wasted a turn becoming Myrina and fell over from the reverberation, preventing her from splitting anymore. Convincing Ethel to give me both the power and Myrina would be very hard with my disadvantage, so I just let the hag have her and moved on with my +1 to charisma. In the Cellar of Last Light, I deleted some mean locks and found the Ring of Coruscation. It inflicts 2 turns of Radiating Orb upon anyone we deal spell damage to, and there's a lot of that going around. It was now time to move over to Moonrise. It's hard to explain just how infuriating moving around like this is. All I wanted to do is just click somewhere in the distance and have Autopath move me there. After what felt like an eternity, I arrived and went straight into the prison to collect an amulet from the warden. Since my AoE was not the best with this build, I decided to take out some of the guards around Moonrise before the final encounter, to at least slightly alleviate how tough the battle would be. This of course included saying goodbye to Sorel. The Thorms, who I usually just talk to death, won't be easy to convince due to our disadvantage either, so it's time to fight them instead. The Gold Goblin stood no chance and died after a simple push and a single missile, but the Doctor would not be as easy with his very impressive HP pool. Making sure to stand at least 3 meters from the sisters, as they would shriek upon hitting him, I got him to skip his first turn thanks to the prone. After another 20 missiles, I used Sanctuary on myself again, rendering him unable to hurt me, and barely had enough spell slots to finish him. Did she just walk through the wall? What is going on? Well, instant transmission up the staircase. Cool. Since Thistobald is the fattest of them all, I decided to go get the by far biggest damage boost we have available in the game to us. Using the normal Invis door opening trick, I merged the 2 combats and sat back watching until Balthazar had a single turn left of his haste potion. By attacking him now, it made sure that he couldn't fight back, since the haste potion just skips his turn. The Justicar took care of Flesh, and I took care of them. I went on to open the vault, revealing the Callous Glow Ring, which, since all enemies permanently will be illuminated from the light of our Coruscation Ring, adds a flat 2 damage to each magic missile. We're really starting to create a rainbow here. I snuck up on Jorgir and collected the one and only Umbral gem we needed, which Scratch's help. Turns out you can just open the door downstairs with knock. You don't even need the other gems. In any case, feeling more ready now, it was time for the final Thorm. Half his health disappeared turn 1 and he even skipped his turn. So I got a bit overconfident and well... On my second attempt, I got the brilliant idea of just standing above him. Can't hurt me if he can't see me, right? And it just worked. He just stood there for 3 turns. It was now time to take out the gift guarding the path to Baldur's Gate. But no one was here. Right, I had totally forgotten to actually do the crash. Just a tiny bit overleveled for it now. Not even the Inquisitor stood a chance, but something not so nice would happen shortly. After beating this fight, Vlaakith appears, urging you to enter the artifact. So with no other choice, I of course went in, and immediately realized how screwed I was. The Astral Plane gives you a huge jump boost that would in any normal circumstances let you clear this jump easily. We, however, cannot jump, and our 9-meter flight was just a tiny bit too short. So with no other option, I had to reload, do the entire fight again, walk all the way back to a non-red zone, grab the Amulet of Misty Step from my camp chest, walk all the way back again, and then finally be able to use Misty Step to clear the gap. The gift now appeared in Act 2, and after a quick battle, it was time to fight Ketheric. I freed Nightsong, took out the significantly smaller amount of enemies waiting for me in Moonrise, and went up to the rooftop. Ketheric was going to be an issue. His magic plate reduces all damage dealt to him by 2, and since our damage is solely dealt in a lot of small instances, this made him significantly more tanky than most enemies. To make things worse, this plate buff would also carry over to Merkel. Thankfully, here on the roof, we do not actually need to kill him, just bring him down to under half health, and I was able to do it with almost all of my spell slots. Clearly I needed a better plan than magic missiles. With no other options, it was time to try and collect the rune powder barrel. I first tried throwing it for Scratch to fetch. It didn't go great. So it was time to give it to Withers and attempt rolling a 20 with disadvantage. The 1 in 400. I can't say I enjoyed it, but eventually I got it done. Oh my god, finally. Of course I would need more burst than just this bomb, and I'm sure you know what that means. 1 extra level into Cleric. In the Mind Flayer colony, I made sure to kill a few enemies to reach level 9, and with this level, Confusion would be available, a vital piece in completing this upcoming battle. It was now time for the hardest fight in the game. I gave Scratch invisibility to have him free Nightsong, and made sure to focus down the Mind Flayer before it could control Dame. Ketheric kind of just stands there as long as you don't approach, so I could freely take him down with 2 chromatic orbs. Merkel is way more formidable, which is exactly why we brought Confusion. It caused him to skip his first turn, letting me do half his health with a scuffed version of the one-shot build. And also made him attack all of his Necromites on the second one. I put down the bomb next to Nightsong and made sure to put as much distance between me and it as I could, which wasn't a lot with my pathetic movement. On his next turn, Merkel snapped out of the Confusion and hit Dame, completely unaware of the explosive that I had left behind. Time for Act 3. The Gith attacked, and since I could not prep with neither Faller Alluve nor Haste, I just cast Sanctuary on myself and walked past them. The gift did not stand a chance, and the Emperor rewarded me with the Enhanced Parasite. Finally, at last, granting me the ability to fly without needing to use a spell in between. I just cannot describe how good this feels to be able to move at a somewhat normal pace. And with this final upgrade, this playthrough had now basically just turned into a showcase of how good Magic Missile is. Still, there were a few annoying roadblocks ahead. First, I wanted the Helm of Balduran located at the bottom of Worm's Rock Prison. I completed the first 2 chambers without any issue, and then I encountered it. The first roadblock I would not be able to overcome. To finish the Chamber of Courage, you need to pick up this torch. But for some unknown reason, you can't throw the torch, you can't move the torch, you can only pick it up by clicking on it. And I could not find any way around this. So for the first time in the game, there was an area that was inaccessible due to being over-encumbered. No helmet for me, I guess. Oh well, I was still able to collect the Armor of Persistence using all of my saved valuables, fireballs, and also the Cloak of Displacement, further increasing our already ridiculous dodge rate. Just 2 more upgrades available now in the game, both located in Lorokan's tower. Yeah, for being unmissable, this damage is not okay. The upgrade I was speaking of was, as per usual, Marco Heshkir. It's just a better spell sparkler, as it also gives us a free level 6 spell slot. Down in the vaults was also a book that when read left behind the level 5 spell Artistry of War, a once per short rest, better version of Magic Missile. Time to collect the remaining Netherstone and finish this run. First on the list, Gortash. Starting off, I destroyed his Watcher Foundry and got level 11. It was now time to respec over to Wizard and grab the Evocation subclass. At level 10, it adds our Intelligence modifier to all our Evocation spells, giving us plus 4 damage to every Magic Missile. Since I was Wizard now, I could also learn and use the Artistry of War spell. Time to deal with Gortash, and he would not be easy to take down. In his phase 2, he gets a buff called Avatar of Tyranny, which makes him immune to all force damage. So I needed a way to skip his phase 2 completely, which meant that I would have to kill him in a single turn. And there just so happens to be a way to do that. I made sure to destroy all the functional force curtains, leaving only the malfunctioning ones. They, contrary to the working one, would debuff him, leaving him vulnerable to most things. And this vulnerability meant that I had just enough damage with Artistry of War and a level 6 magic missile to take him out before he got any chance to act. I collected the gloves with his Netherstone and went after Orin. Since I am the Dark Urge, there was no need to touch Saravok at all, and I could just walk right on in. The Dark Urge also gets the privilege of having a 1v1 with Orin without anyone else interfering. And despite some discouraging words from my butler, this fight did not last long. All 3 Netherstones collected, time for the final fight. Casting Invisibility on my first turn ensured that I could approach the crown, mostly untouched. Using Globe of Invulnerability, the Emperor opened the portal to the brain, and despite it having a big health pool, 5 turns was more than enough to finish it off, using a couple of magic missiles and some chromatic orbs. So yeah, can you beat Baldur's Gate 3 while over encumbered? Yes, you can. Did I want to end myself doing so multiple times because of how tedious it got? Yes, I did. Got around 33 hours of raw footage, where 60% of it is this. Just don't try this at home. That's all. Bye bye.